Morning, everybody. Welcome to episode number 23 of Merritt in the Morning. Over there in the yellow sweater, Jim Merritt, 30-year state senator, nicest person I've ever met. Actually, I take that back. Nick Roberts gets that title. You're in the top 5, though.
Yeah.
There's Mac. Neighbor Mac. How are you, sir?
How are you, Mac?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mac. Jim Merritt, good to see you.
Hi, Jacquline Kronk. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Pleasure.
This is high stakes.
Well, you're live. You're being broadcast live right now.
Neighbor.
This is more than random. Let's see. The foremost track and cross country expert in the state of Indiana. He calls track and cross country meets for the NCAA. The state finals.
Fabulous.
Was the coach, I believe, at Warren Central forever. So he's famous. That's our
Walking
brush.
legend.
Our brush with fame today.
Klopp lives in the fort,
Yeah, I live like 3 blocks from here.
and
So
this is
I
a
love
wonderful place to live.
it. It
Awesome.
is. It is. So
My
President,
first time.
well, welcome to Fort Benjamin Harrison in the heart of Lawrence.
and he's the president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce.
I am. I'm the man in the yellow shirt today. Our guest today, Jacquline Kronk, she is the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of St. Joseph County. Thank you for making the trek down from St. Joseph County. Welcome to Lawrence.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here with you.
You're welcome. So, Jim, I told you that I wanted to take a little moment to do an editorial. I just came from the dentist. And so my dentist is over across from Eastgate Mall, if you remember that, at Shadeland and Washington Street. I will say in Indianapolis, the East Side has a problem with, it has an image problem and it has a blight problem. And it has occurred to me that Eastgate Mall is probably the most visible quadrant of the East Side and is also the biggest source of blight on the East Side. Do you know who the tenant is of Eastgate Mall right now?
I believe it's the city of Indianapolis.
The city of Indianapolis, Jim. So I'm telling you, city of Indianapolis leaders, if you want to solve the blight problem on the East Side of Indianapolis, how about start with your own house?
Yeah, and what's interesting also is Irvington. There
Love
are a
Irvington.
lot of people want to live in Irvington.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful homes and former home of Butler University. And it's just a shame because when I try to think about the East Side, I think about Irvington, but it's much more than that. No question about it.
Yes. So
What
where
proposed solutions do you guys have for that space?
I would say it's a fine space. Fun fact, so Eastgate Consumer Mall, that used to be Eastgate Consumer Mall, was built in the 50s, which was kind of the height of the Cold War, and everybody was worried about nuclear war. And the federal government at the time had a program where they would give you a subsidy if you built a basement that effectively was a bomb shelter. So it had, thick concrete walls, whatever. Eastgate took advantage of that. So it is now also a data farm that holds all sorts of data. And it was perfect for that because it is pretty much nuclear bomb proof, or at least a nuclear
Yeah,
bomb.
what it really needs to be is cleaned up. And
Yes.
the shadeland that goes by it, it just it needs attention. And I don't think people really want it. I ran for mayor in Indianapolis, so I put my 2 cents in. And let's talk Jacquline Kronk.
Yeah, well, first, Jim, before we get to our guest, which I'm very excited about our guest. Again, you are watching Merritt in the Morning. We are coming to you live today from Cafe Audrey's at beautiful Fort Harrison, open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week. Beer and wine available. Remember, #food at the fort, if you can see that up in the upper right-hand corner. And I say beer and wine because you can get Alpsbrow beer here at Cafe Audrey's. Remember, so very, very Bavarian, ask for it by name. We also want to thank our sponsor, Stockyards Bank and Trust, locations at 71st and Binford, Carmel, downtown Indianapolis, Plainfield, and St. Francis Hospital. We also want to thank our newest sponsor, the Honey Baked Ham Company, locations at 96th and Michigan and Greenhound Pass in Carmel.
I had lunch there the other day.
Did you, I assume you enjoyed it?
Apple caramel. It was, their ham sandwiches are fantastic.
Today.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
And they have one called, I think it's called the honey baked. And it even has an onion ring on it. And it was just, and Klopp, I love the mustard. I love the sweet mustard.
Yes.
And so it's so simple to go in there. If you want a ham sandwich for lunch, or they have a variety of different offerings, stop in there. It's easy at West 96th Street and as well as it's right near the Menards.
Yeah, and if you look at the bottom of our
In Carmel.
slide here, through February 29th, get $2 off any lunch combo that includes one of their handcrafted sandwiches.
Oh.
So it's a heck of a deal. So they're not just carry out hams, they have sandwiches and all sorts of things. Soups. And as we learned, apparently Peyton Manning was a very regular customer there.
Out in the West 96th Street.
Yes.
On his way to Colt
So
headquarters.
now we've done that. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Thank you for indulging us as we went through all the business.
Love it. Can't go wrong.
And we
with
said
plenty
hi to
of ham.
Mac, yes. So Boys and Girls Club of St. Joseph County. Now I know you know Jim. You and I just met.
We just met.
Oh,
We
you
all
just met too?
Yeah.
This is a,
Well, okay,
Yeah.
well,
this is like
Thank-
podcast speed dating.
yeah, I'd say,
Thank you to the Mind Trust for the help, because, education is something that I've always been concerned about, because I'm a father and I'm a grandfather, and you want your society to be safe, so you want a good education system. And in the Mind Trust demonstrated to me that and up in St. Joe County, they're doing a fantastic job of keeping kids going the right direction with their education. And she's a part of that.
So tell me, what is it you do and how do you morph into all of that?
Yeah, so the Boys and Girls Club obviously is a national movement, but here in Indiana, we have a really strong contingency. There's 32 different clubs across the state. I'm up in the South Bend region, but we also cover Cass, Fulton, Pulaski, and White County as well. All fall under our purview. So we've grown exponentially over the last 4 years. Jim and I were just talking, I started in January of 2020.
I started my job with the chamber on, I think, just about this day in February of 2020. So go on, I know exactly where
Yeah,
you're going with
so
that.
you can imagine the
Eggs.
roller coaster that was when that March hit, and but we also realized when the schools made the difficult decision to close, that we had a responsibility to stay open. We did through that entire time period, and it was really important for us to make sure that we were reliable and we were consistent for the families that we were serving. And so that really regained that trust and that rapport with with those families, particularly those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and allowed us to grow. And so we view our role is to complement the great work that the teachers are doing in the classroom every single day, but the out of school time providers before and after school are absolutely imperative right now, particularly as a result of the learning loss from the pandemic. And so we are busting our tails to do everything that we can to fill that void. We've grown from 5 locations in 2020 to now we just opened our 30th. And so we have increased our staffing from 50 to just over 400
Wow.
and doing our best to meet the demand. Having said that, I still have a wait list of just over 800 children.
Mhm.
And so opportunities like this for families that really do need those additional supports are the demand far outweighs what we can provide. And so that's really what we do every day.
So let me ask you, what is your stated mission? And then what is it you guys really do?
Sure. Our mission is to inspire and enable all kids, especially those who need us the most, to reach their full potential as productive and responsible citizens. And our vision is to do that through supportive relationships and excellent programming. It's really imperative that the kids that we're serving get the very best. And I think more often than not, kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, again, do not get access to those resources. And I think it's our responsibility to fight and to ensure that they are getting the tools that they need to be successful and be a positive part of our workforce moving forward.
Well, I use the phrase, learn to read and then read to learn. And is there a role that your organization has that when third grade comes and there's a reading deficiency and there's going to be someone that is not promoted to the next grade, is there something or let's talk about second grade, because they're talking, in the bill, in the legislature, they're talking about somehow having I read 3 as a part of their challenge for the year of tests. What do you see with this big problem in the state of Indiana that we've got, where kids by 3rd grade are not reading, they have a deficiency? What in your mind, where are we going?
Yeah, and I liken it the story. So not long ago, I was at one of our club locations, and a young man in our program, actually in 5th grade, so jump 2 years ahead of that, where our baseline threshold is, in 5th grade, was really acting out. He was throwing a chair around, was having some serious behavioral issues. And so they were short staffed. So I jumped in, took a walk with him, realized he liked basketball. We shot some hoops in the gym, self-regulated him, calmed him down a little bit. And through that discussion, we came back and he was doing a reading exercise through our literacy program. And through conversations with him, what really came to be is he would rather act a fool and get kicked out of the program than be outed as someone who doesn't know how to read. And so we've got this challenge that we're facing our young people, that we have not equipped them with the tools to thrive. And reading is a fundamental aspect to be able to do anything. You are not going to thrive in mathematics or anything else if you don't know how to read. And so I believe really making sure that we have those foundational elements, the science of reading, in place prior to that point. And it starts in kindergarten, it starts in preschool, it starts in these where we're really getting children comfortable with those phonics. And right now, I think with everything that we're throwing at kids and how stretched our teachers are, we cannot do that effectively in the time period that we have in school right now. So we've really got to double down and realize, all right, what other additional supports can we provide? How can we identify and laser focus the kids who are really far behind and get them additional interventions, either one-on-one or high dosage tutoring, all the supports that we need. And then we can't forget about summer.
Right.
Summer is a huge aspect of this, because you have that learning loss in that slide there as well.
So how do you work? I mean, obviously you've probably got 25 school districts within your catchment area. How do you work with those schools to identify those kids that need extra help?
Well, that relationship is imperative to the success. And so entirely our relationship with the school districts, with the superintendents, with the teachers themselves, with principals, we work hand in hand with them to evaluate and identify based on the data where children are pacing. And then from there, we create subset groups of individuals. We have our literacy curriculum that we wrote with the University of Notre Dame that we implement that really, again, doubles down and pulls out the kids who do need that high dosage intervention. And then we work with them. I think a lot of it comes down to ratios and that small group element. We also have found great success when we put a high performing child with one who's struggling, and that they both rise. And that is something that we really find fascinating as well. And that it also builds community, because in learning, you still need to be able to trust and understand. And you want that learning environment to be a positive place for a child. And when all those things come to fruition, that's where the magic happens.
Now, is it true? And I'm learning about this all the time because I'm worried about my community. I'm worried about the state. I'm worried about my grandchildren. Is it true that people that are in a teaching position were teaching kids how to read by visuals, octopus, by a picture of an octopus rather than the phonics of octopus?
Yeah, I think that Indiana Department of Education identified a while back that we needed to reevaluate how we were teaching literacy. And I think that's where the science of reading came about. And we've done our best to complement that and to tie our programming to the Department of Ed standards so that we're all on the same wavelength. It's much like a safety security plan or a active shooter drill. If we're all using the same language, those muscle memories, those skills are then embedded in a child. We need to do that with literacy as well. And again, we need everybody at the table, community-based organizations, the schools, parents, all have to be at the forefront in really driving this forward. And we have to be speaking the same language. And I think that's what ideally this bill would help achieve.
The bill and it's House Bill 10 or
it's embedded in a
couple bills.
Yes.
Yeah, the old
So what is the language and what is the goal of the bill?
Well, I think,
Bills,
Bills, okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I think the goal, and I know Linda Rogers has been a huge champion of this space, is
Senator Linda Rogers from South Bend
correct.
area.
She is, and she has been a tremendous advocate for us, and we're a huge fan of hers, and her advocacy for our kids. I think the legislation is really trying to hone in and focus on what works, and if we have the data that proves what works, let's focus on that. It feels like it's a
Data.
kind of simple notion, right? But I think if we can use the information and the statistics around the state and then arm ourselves with that ammo to then go and say, this is what's working. How can we scale that? And how can we stay as nimble as possible to scale that as fast as possible? I think that's where we get bogged down. I know you and I, Jim, are talking about this. We've got to move quicker. Got to move quicker.
Yeah, nimbleness and a lot of this, two questions that rise in my mind. One is, we're now focusing on second and third graders, but what are we doing for preschool, kindergarten, and eighth graders at the two ends of that? And also, Plop, a lot of this comes to money. There's federal money, that hundreds of millions of dollars were spent or sent to the states for learning loss and education, or excuse me, reading was a big part of that. But that money is stopping in September. And I'm sure the Boys and Girls Club is a recipient of some of those monies, and either through the Mind Trust or other avenues. But how do we make it so that we can help kids phonetically before first grade and second grade, and then they pass in third grade, and that seventh or eighth grader who during the pandemic really got cheated.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head on that. We ran e-learning for a long time. And so I sat in these gymnasiums and I watched kindergartners try to learn on a Chromebook that didn't know how to read, and what that impact that had on them, and what their future trajectory looks like as a result. That should be alarming to us. Not to mention all of the hierarchy of needs not being met, right? So you've got that gap there. I think ultimately it's drilling down and saying, okay, again, going back to what works, science of reading, right? And we're doubling down on science of reading and the philosophy around implementing literacy, and then trying to understand how can we leverage all the necessary partners, get them on the same page. And then I think we need to set some really bold and audacious goals.
Bold.
How can we get half the state to pass the iRead test by X? How can we do this? And how can we, again, monitor and track and make it public and visible and get that energy and momentum there so that we're all heading towards this one collective goal?
Mhm.
I think Dr. Jenner's done a great job in this space of promoting things like that, but we do need another shot in the arm.
We need all 5 governor candidates, Klopp,
They do.
to talk
So-
about this.
So let me ask, education, I've always kind of heard as a three-legged stool. You've got teachers and administration, and they're held accountable based on results. Students who are held accountable based on testing, but then the parents are always kind of the weak link in how do you hold parents accountable for their children's education?
Yeah, and I would use the term weak link loosely there. I think
Some parents are more actively involved than others.
yeah, but I think you have to go back generationally and look at what their education experience was like. If a young person who then gives birth to another young person and had a negative interaction with the school system, what do you think their experience is going to be like? And are they jumping at the chops to go in and be like, let's go fight and let's work hard to get our kid what they need, when really they need trust. They need trust. And that's where I feel like, again, out of school time providers can be that buffer and that liaison between, because if your child is chronically absent, or if you're struggling at home and your hierarchy of needs are not being met, you need some sort of assistance and help and a leg up to say, okay, here's what you can do. And if someone like the Boys and Girls Club can come and be that buffer, that's not punitive, that's not going to get a letter from Todd Rikita, right? That's not going to say, if you don't
We'll
do
talk
this,
about that after the break.
there's going to be some, you're going to go to court. Or if we can come in and be that liaison, I think that can be a huge value add to embracing education again.
Sponsors?
Yes, Jim, you won't believe this, but people actually want to sponsor this show. So
It's amazing.
here, we'll reset. You were watching Merritt in the morning.
I'm Merritt.
He's Jim Merritt. I'm Brad Kloffenstein. She's Jacqueline Kronk she's the CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of St. Joseph County. I want to thank our sponsors, the Honey Baked Ham Company, locations at 96 in Michigan, and then up on the Carmel Westfield border on Greyhound Pass in front of Menards. Remember, $2 off any lunch combo all through the month of February 29th. Ask them at the counter for more details. They'll be
That's a
more than
deal.
That's a heck of a deal. Thank you, Honey Baked Ham.
Making me hungry.
Yes, exactly. And Mike Kalb was our guest last week.
Yes.
Did a great job. So thank you, Mike, for coming on and talking to us and talking ham and business. Speaking of which, if you have a business and you're looking for a banking partner, talk this way. Thank you. I'm learning here, Jim. It only took us 23 episodes to get to this point. Stockyards Bank and Trust. They are a great business banking partner. Locations at 71st and Binford, Carmel, downtown Indianapolis, Plainfield, St. Francis Hospital. Also, I'm going to take a liberty. Stockyards Bank and Trust is donating 5 bottles of bourbon to a bourbon raffle fundraiser for the visually impaired preschool services.
Fantastic.
that
Thank
my
you,
wife
Mona.
works for. So yes,
Great.
so yes, thank you for that. And also, if you're watching this and want some good bourbon, watch for details on certainly my Facebook page. I will share a link on how you can bid on that bourbon. Also, thanks to Alpsbrow Beer. So very, very Bavarian. Might have to have a couple of those this weekend, Jim. We're actually coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the release of Alpsbrow Beer. That happened end of February of 2023. So
Well, you're kind of a celebrity now.
hardly.
Well, you had a bunch of people showing up at what,
Denver's
Denver's
2 weeks ago.
meet the owners of Alpsbrow Beer.
Love it.
AKA have some beers with Brad. And thanks once again for coming to you from Cafe Audrey's at beautiful Fort Harrison. Remember, hashtag food at the fort and hashtag why I love Lawrence.
You know,
So now back to the show.
yes, I have a question. You know, Dr. Jenner is, and the Department of Education have done a good job of bringing this to the fore. The Mind Trust, yourself, when you're meeting with a legislator, and I'm sure you've had plenty, you probably have testified in front of committees and hearings. What's your overall impression about the legislature? And are they embracing, did they understand there's a real situation here, something's imploding? What's your understanding? You've been there so much this year. How do you think we know Senator Rogers gets it.
Yeah. Yeah, she does get it and she's championing it. You know, I think the education committee gets it as well. We've been really fortunate. Senator Ryan Mishler, a dear friend of ours up north, and he's come and seen firsthand. And I think it goes back to the data. I think that's what does it for Ryan is
We talk about data on this show a lot.
yeah, and when we've got a couple new initiatives with Notre Dame and the lab for economic opportunities and our data. So we have now been running what we call our Strive curriculum, which is our math literacy, social emotional learning, and then our college and workforce readiness program. Over the last 3 years, our kids have 64% of them have gained 1 or more grade levels in literacy, and 68 1 or more grade levels in math fluency, and then 20% of our kids have gained 2 or more grade levels in both. And so the results are there. And I think that is what's inspiring and motivating the legislators to really invest, again, going back to what works. And let's double down on that. Let's take that, let's scale it. And that's what we're in the process of doing right now. We took our curriculum and we passed it to 6 other Boys and Girls Clubs around the state, down in Evansville and Fort Wayne. They're taking our curriculum, scaling it so that hopefully we can see the same impact there. And I think this is what legislators, if I'm them, I want to invest in something that I see the ROI. And if there's not an ROI, then we need to pivot, right? We need to be good stewards of the resources that
That's
are
what
given.
we're doing now, is pivoting.
And so
Pivot to pivot.
really grateful for that investment, but also know that we have to keep our foot in the gas to make sure that those returns stay and that we're enhancing them and continuing to evolve.
So what kind of response are you getting? Obviously, FSSA has their $1 billion problem this year, which I would think is somewhat all encompassing. It's not a budget year this year.
Sure.
So when you go in and say, we've had this fabulous program and we're having results, here's the data that shows the results. However, we need our funding to last beyond September. What kind of response are you getting?
I think it's a mixed bag because it's priorities,
Mhm.
right? And so everybody comes to these legislators, from your experience, and they've got their hands out. Um, I'm doing our best to be the voice for the kids that we're serving and the families that we're serving, because again, when it comes to space, you were talking about the east side and the blight.
Yeah,
I would argue when a young child walks into a school or a boys and girls club and the environment is not conducive, that tells them what they perceive their trajectory to be. And so when I go down to legislators and I'm talking about our programs, I go back to our vision of excellent programming, because that is what our kids deserve. They also deserve an environment and a space that allows them to thrive and succeed and to rise. I believe when we give our kids agency and autonomy to do that, that they will surprise us. I think there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of noise. And that I think if we can use asset-based framing as a state and say, hey, here are these lofty, ambitious goals that we talked about earlier, and we can achieve them, but we do need this investment, and we can't do it without legislators, again, stepping to the table and saying education is important. And our future workforce development depends on that. There are so many correlations between that, but we have to start on the preventative side of things. This is not something we can put a Band-Aid on 10 years from now.
well, especially the area that you cover, I would call some of those areas challenged, very challenged. And you're right, if you're a kid who's growing up in Winnemac, if you only see this much around you, your horizons might be limited unless somebody like you comes along and says, you know what? You could do a heck of a lot more, whether that be here, whether it be elsewhere. You can be, yeah, your future can be bright. Here's how it can get there.
Can you tell us just one success story? Don't give the name of somebody that you're really proud of, that you've been there 4 years now.
Sure.
And so you've probably seen somebody that has come into the system, if you will, into the programs and really turned it around and is set to thrive in life.
Instantly, the first one that comes to mind, I started as a volunteer 12 years ago. So with the organization, I got involved that way. I was mentoring a young woman. Her name is Layla. Layla grew up in a somewhat of a tough background and really needed some additional intervention support and just that nucleus, that army around her. Layla is now a pediatric nurse in Indianapolis.
That's great.
And is just got married, just had her first child, and is just thriving. And so to see Layla is just one example. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary as an organization today. So she's just one example of the thousands of kids that we've touched. But I would also go back to the number of kids that were club kids who are now working for us. The majority of our club directors who are leading organizations were also club kids. They're from the neighborhood. They understand the impact that the Boys and Girls Club can have on kids and are reinvesting back.
Yeah, what a mentor. Somebody can say, this person had success here. I want to be like them.
For sure.
Yeah.
For a young child to aspire, the number of kids who's like, I want to be CEO one day. And I'm like, you can.
Sure you
You
can.
absolutely can.
I'm glad the
You gotta
sky's the
work
limit.
hard. You gotta work hard and you've got to earn it, but here we go.
So Jacqueline, Boys and Girls Clubs, where do you get your funding from? I'm assuming it's coming from several different buckets, but
It is. So mainly private and public sector, right? So it's, for us, it's about a 60-40 split, public and private. We really work hard to keep those ratios about as even as possible and diversify our funding streams. And then it's all about sustainability. We've seen exponential growth over the last 4 years, and it's really on us to make sure that we have that those savings to continue to grow and expand, but then to take care of our people. I am really big on culture. I'm really big on making sure that we are reinvesting back into our framework. We've operated with a sizable surplus over the last few years, and I'm really proud of that. Most nonprofits would come and be like, oh, well, I don't want to share how well we're doing. But I'm like, let's talk about it. I think more nonprofits need to run like businesses. And I feel like that surplus should be reinvested back into the organization to make you more effective. And then guess what? People like betting on a winning horse. And when that winning horse has got the data and the great talent and all
Success
the,
breeds success.
and you've got it. So we're rolling with that right now and running with the momentum that we have. I have an amazing leadership team of people that we poached from Notre Dame and a lot of industries in South Bend that aren't too pleased with me, but these individuals really care about our mission. And I think you need the world's brightest people working on the hardest problems.
Absolutely.
And then you
This
need
is
to
a
pay them appropriately.
Yeah.
And I believe in that as well, because you can't stay in the nonprofit sector making chump change.
Right.
You've got to be paid a living wage and be able to sustain your family. And then that allows you to have the ingenuity and the success and the innovation that we want to see.
So volunteer participation, has that been strong or I know I've talked to some not-for-profits around here and just the participation level seems to be dwindling a little bit. I don't know if that's post-COVID. I don't know if that's generational,
Sure.
but the number of people who volunteer seems to be reduced and the just total number of volunteers that, I mean, like in Lawrence, it seems like it's the same 15, 20 people.
You know, we're in a unique position because we've got the University of Notre Dame, we've got
Mm-hmm.
IU, we've got Holy Cross all in our backyard. So we have over 400 volunteers a month. So the volunteers are a lifeblood of what we do. They allow us to reduce our ratios,
Right.
help with students. But for us, I go back to, it's less about how many volunteers we have and are they having an impact?
Right.
And is there a meaningful relationship there? Are they helping our kids thrive where they need to be? Days for us are done of like, I'm catering to the volunteer. I'm saying to volunteers, and I may be a little bit brass on this, but you are here to help our kids get better. It's not to create a great experience for you.
Yeah.
It may be uncomfortable. You may have to deal with an unruly child or behavior issues. This is a part of what being a part of our organization is about. And if you really want to walk the walk and get involved, then this is how you do it. But we're not going to come here and have you pat in the back. Like, we need people who are willing to work and build that relationship and that rapport with our club kids.
Now, you're in Indianapolis. Last question. You're in Indianapolis today. You must be going to the State House later on. Do you have a committee hearing that you're following, or are you talking to legislators, or what's today? What's on? It's Thursday.
Yeah, I think you guys know this better than anyone. You guys are both relationship people. It's making sure that I am a squeaky wheel, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil.
You got to be there.
And building that rapport and the relationship. It's also building relationships with the Department of Ed and Mind Trust and our other key partners. And then partnering with, Maggie Lewis, the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club down here in Indianapolis, is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's done a really good job.
And so we are constantly collaborating, brainstorming, ideating, what partnerships can we bring to the state? How can we elevate us entirely? We've got a big initiative with Lily right now that we're working on. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Funny, my experience at the State House, you'd go to the Senate Public Policy Committee and you'd have some very important testimony that you want to give. And there's a senator who's in the gallery sending you funny text messages trying to get you to laugh.
Klopp, you've asked some really good questions today.
As opposed to the other episode, not.
Oh, you guys are fun.
Jacqueline, we really appreciate you
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You
My
you
pleasure.
might get the award for furthest distance traveled to be a
She's
guest.
a very busy woman. too.
She is, I know. Thank you for carving
I've
out some
learned
time.
that path down 31 many
Thank
a
goodness
time.
we got 31,
Oh my
no
goodness.
stoplights,
So even,
Yeah.
are they
Thank
all
you
gone
for
now?
having me.
most if not all.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So thank you all for watching. Jacqueline Kronk has been our guest today. We've been talking education, boys and girls clubs of South Bend and beyond.
Yeah.
So thank you. Let me pull our sponsor slides back up here. You've been watching Merritt in the Morning. He's Jim Merritt. I'm Brad Klopfenstein. We're always here. Jacqueline is not, but we'll be back.
Kind of is.
Well, kind of is. I mean, come back anytime. So yes, you are always welcome. We will carve out time because these are very important issues that you're talking about. We've been coming to you live from Cafe Live. If you're watching on Facebook, we will edit this and throw it back up on our YouTube page later today.
Tammy.
So yes, thank you, Tammy, for hosting us. Thank you to Alps Brow Beer, Ask for It by Name, available at fine or somewhat mediocre local establishments.
Well, the fine here.
The fine here, yeah, we're not picky. We got a liquor license, we'll let you sell it. Thank you to Stockyards Bank and Trust, locations at 71st and Binford, Carmel, downtown Indianapolis, Plainfield, and in St. Francis Hospital on the south side. And I don't think you have to be sick to bank at that location. You can just go in there. Want to thank the Honey Baked Hand Company for their sponsorship. Remember, throughout February, $2 off any lunch combo. That includes one of their handcrafted sandwiches, chips or deli side, a drink. Ask for the lunch special. They'll hook you up. Tell the Calbs, thank you very much for sponsoring Merritt in the Morning. Thank you all for watching. We will do this all once again in 2 weeks. Until then, have a great week. Why does this not want to end? There we